amazing students here to read for you guys tonight, so we'll hop right into it. First up is going to be Soph Croft. Soph is a game design major with a minor in creative writing. They work across poetry, short fiction, and video games with a particular love for intersections between mediums and a passion for collaborative storytelling. In their free time, they enjoy Dungeons and Dragons, a wonderful culmination of their passion. So, floor is yours.
I started writing poetry about a year ago, in the fall of 2023 when I took Dr. Elizabeth Hoover's poetry workshop as part of my creative writing minor, which I had just started. And I had not been particularly enthused to begin, as I had never been a rabid fan of poetry before. But, you know, Dr. Hoover did what she does best, and she changed my mind. And for that I cannot thank her enough. So tonight I'm going to read you all a small selection of 7 poems. We're going to start with an Ars Poetica. Special thanks to Edie for making funny faces while I do this. Alright. Ars Poetica. I'm looking in the lantern room, where the rain breathes wrapped at the glass, and the light curls around my shoulders, urging me. I'm listening to my mother when she says, "This isn't normal, I'm sorry." I'm lurching in her car on the cusp of sunset, shafts of sunlight searching our interior. I'm lurking in the lighthouse again, unlatching the window and watching the storm center. You don't know what to do that. This second poem is called Oarfish. It's one that I wrote about a year ago. And I have revised it a little for this reading. It's about a lighthouse because I just can't stop. I'll begin. Oarfish. Old footprints settle in stone steps of a lighthouse. Silence. Outside, the storm rattles, rain teeth snapping, scraping. Over the railing, flakes of long dry paint drift down, spiraling, soft. Oarfish slide past the window, scales flashing, sounding. Our lantern room turns aquarium observation deck, where I search for your eyes in the kelp, singing. This next one I wrote, I want to say like a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month or so. You know, time doesn't exist in my mind, I'm going to be honest. But it is called Clementine. Cling to your vine, pockmarked with dents and nicks, shivering on threadbare fiber while the rain bats around the leaves. The tree swings, groans from root to crown, and you've got a few days left on that branch before you hit the ground and roll into your siblings, nestle in the roots, bump up against each other, skin to skin. The men will tromp through their orchard, pluck you, and call you an orange, a nasty one too, and toss you back in the dirt where the roots shift to make room for you among the rolling banks of discarded, lovely, lounging clementine. This next one is about how I wish I knew how to paint and it is called In Fresh Words. I wish I could paint the way late afternoons dip into inkwell forests of curling black oaks, how they wash the feather grass, the fescue and clover beds in a dust cloud glow. The line walking paths carved into wheat fields, winding, looping, fading and stooping to kiss the roots of great cottonwood.
branches shaking tufts of wool onto the sun-splattered grass below. The curtains knit from wisteria draped over lavender glass windows, diamond lattice, laved in rivulets of soft drops, and a question. A lopsided blue candle asks from its desk within, wax and wick swirling into one warm pool. A little ship that lists portside, two lights pouring onto the water, and the gulls, knife strokes, impasto, imposing themselves on the star-sown fog bank.
The next one is called Winter on the Scout Grounds. I used to be a Girl Scout, and some of you may know in the crowd, that's not a great experience most of the time. Winter on the Scout Grounds. The wagon circle lurks around our smaller selves. A broom handle splinters between my fingers. Bristles scrape blackened wood into a cooled pit. Not like that, she says. Clicks her tongue. You'll have to learn to sweep if you're going to be a writer. Freckled and unyielding, her knuckles pale over the broomstick. The faded white lines of cat scratches wrinkle as she rakes over snow-furred stone. She shoves the handle against my knuckles. The ground, clatter, snap, hush, and returns to her boiling barrels of bleach. She directs the girls, ungloved, to dip their plates and labels in. Careful, she says. It will stay. Alright, second to last. We're getting there, guys. Stay with me. Next one is about libraries. I wrote it very recently, and I revised it for this, so, good for you guys. Book note. You will see countless libraries in your life. None of them will fit quite right, but they'll cover you. They'll be enough. Scratchy carpet underfoot and a handful of familiar faces. The corner of overcrowded old computers. The remains of an ill-fated book fair. The slips of paper sticking out of make-believe ballot boxes. These will be hallmarks of intimacy, words printed on your tongue in the ink of other voices, other mouths, other pages, other people you learn to love. You read aloud to yourself on the long nights, when the lamp does not suffice. The door has lost its frame, the hall abuzz with static, shapes your mind tries to pry from the vast, cramped dark. Still, the dust jacket bends beneath your fingers, and the paper's weight will keep you still. Okay, last one. We're getting there. This one is called Hot Pink Heels, and this is for my Aunt Tracy. She was a firecracker, and I love her very much. Hot Pink Heels. There was a bar nearby where we ended up after. I must have eaten something. The crush of mourners was sharp, loud, buzzing beneath the caged lights swinging overhead. It was the first time I met my great aunt. Met in the general sense, maybe in a false sense. She was walking down the hall in her silks and earrings, dark blue, wild hair fanned out around her. I never spoke a word to her. Rod was in the hall, drowning in the light coming off the blinds. His arms shook when he held me and he said, "I'm glad you're here." What do you say back? What's it on? It was an open casket. I curled into a folding chair at the back, just outside of a blue church sun. My mother, in her hot pink heels, Tracy's favorite color, drew me up to the front to sit beside her. I watched the screen off-center while her songs spilled from the speakers, 100 of Tracy's faces flashed over the canvas. Mom tapped her heels to the rhythm, clutched my hand between tight fingers. There's no poetic way to say this. Rod is bending down to kiss his wife goodbye, and she will never walk out of that room.
Those are beautiful. All right, next up, we have Caleb Davis. Caleb Davis is a creative writing student who enjoys fiction. Their favorite genres are dystopia and sci-fi. From right here in St. Louis, in their free time, they also enjoy cooking. Let's welcome Caleb.
Well, this is a piece that I have not had a lot of time to work on, so this is like the third draft of it, but it is called Into the Fog. I woke up in a cold sweat. The nightmares of the world outside the bunker plagued my every attempt at sleep. After taking a few deep breaths, I remembered that I was in my room. My hand rested instinctually on the revolver that never left my head. I realized that my tendency to sleep fully clothed and armed might be a sign that I'm paranoid, but I believe those who lack foresight are those who die first. I looked over at my clock. I've got a bad habit of frequently checking the time. The photo of my late wife blocked the numbers, but it didn't matter what time it was. Time had become meaningless, just another remnant of life before the fog. I was jealous of the children that were born in the bunker over the last few years. They would have no memory of the sun against their cheeks or the crisp winter air. They wouldn't have anything from before to miss. My hell will be their norm. I rubbed a hand through the short, sharp, graying strands of hair, itched my face, and realized it was time to shave. My boots were always where they were, at the foot of my bed. After knotting the laces, I took the vest from one of two hooks that hung on my wall and zipped it up.
Padding the pockets to make sure they held extra ammunition. Taking the backpack from the other hook, I slung it over my shoulders. My hand ran across the backpack to make sure the oxygen tank attached there was still secured. Before opening the door, I did a final scan around my room in case I missed something. The lights were on in the bunker at all hours of the day, illuminating the hallway of dozens of the cold, gray metal doors. Socializing with the other bunker residents never appealed to me and prompted me to wake up earlier than most to avoid small talk. When the fog forced us down here, the bunker was much smaller than it is now. It was originally designed to hold 4 families, but when everything went to shit, they ended up letting people in who were fleeing the fog. The owners of the bunker were doomsday preppers who ended up being right. The fog eventually took over, leaving nowhere above ground safe. So many people trapped in such a small space, they quickly assembled teams to expand the bunker. I was originally part of a team that dug new tunnels and worked on constructing new parts of the bunker. Teamwork wasn't my strong suit, and when my wife got worse, I switched to scavenging. She needed medicine fast or she would die. As she was on her deathbed, I was scavenging for medication. I never found the drug we needed to save her life. Maybe I stuck with scavenging in the hopes that it could help the rest of the bunker dwellers grow old. Maybe it would prevent anyone else from enduring the same pain as me. Or maybe my efforts would stop someone from an unnecessary death. And maybe it would keep my mind occupied. When I wasn't busy, all I could think about was my wife. Thoughts about failing her, memories of her dying. These thoughts clouded my mind, obscuring any memories of time when we were happy, times before the fog. I never took a day off. Even if I did, what was I supposed to do with it? Hobbies were irrelevant, so you sat lifelessly or got to work. My feet hit the metal stairs that led up to the security checkpoint. There was only one exit, and the scavengers had to be let out by security. A balding guard heard my footsteps and leaned over the ledge to look down and see who was coming. After arriving at the top, the guard pressed a button on his rusted panel. He looked forward as the door began to open with a loud creak and the whirring of machinery. The guards had given up talking to me after years of never replying to them. The door slowly inched into the ceiling, retracted by some technology embedded in the stone. Whatever machine opened the door released a long, sad creak and sounded as though it was going to fail. Finally, the jaws of the airlock were open. I walked into the space between its 2 intimidating doors. The guard pressed another button and the door's mechanism moaned again, causing the metal tooth of the first door to protrude from the ceiling and creep towards the stone floor of the airlock. I grabbed the mask attached to my oxygen tank and secured it to my face. tightening it and triple checking the seal. Checking my watch, the lights inside the airlock turned red, and the sound of rushing wind drowned everything else out as they purged air from the room. There was a blaring noise when the lights turned back off. The door in front of me began to raise as if it hurt the door to do so. Accompanied by the haunting groan of old machinery, it retreated into the ceiling as fog began to seep into the airlock. I prepared to step back into the nightmare as the fog thickened. Taking a deep breath through the oxygen tube, I stepped on the stone floor of the cave the bunker was built in. The small mouth of the cave led to a view of the nearby city of Blessa, barely an eerie outline. The spires of the taller buildings stood out from the shadows and pierced the fog, the only part of the city that was truly visible. I kept my hand on my revolver and began walking towards Blessa. You didn't need a gun to go anywhere in the city before the fog, but I wouldn't go anywhere near it today without one. When we first moved to Blessa almost 10 years ago, we were happy. My wife and I had just got better jobs and moved out together to an apartment in the city. It was a small city with a shiny billboard that read, "Welcome to Blessa, a bright city with a bright future," and we believed it. We thought nothing could change the amazing life we lived here. Then my wife got sick. Then there was a strange fog. Then looting. Then people exposed to the fog turned into monsters. We barely made it to the outskirts of the city where we were let into the bunker. On my last expedition to the warehouse district, I found a building belonging to a medical company that had no clear signs of entry. Ideally, nobody had looted it, and the contents of the building could be transported back to the bunker. The welcome sign was rusted and leaning on the ground when I passed it. The words seemed like a bad joke. A stone clattered across the pavement and I froze. My hand hovered over my holster. Drawing it would make too much noise. Listening for footsteps, my eyes darted in every direction. My breaths became more rapid. Sweat rolled down the side of my head. My heart beat against my chest like it wanted to break free. The savage creatures that live in the fog are called stalkers, and they're mostly blind, but their hearing is pretty damn good. It's hard to get away from one if it can hear you moving. When they aren't actively chasing after something, they're usually awkwardly shuffling around and listening for their next victim. If you do something to alert them, though, you're as good as dead. Running isn't an option because they'll know where you are before you even know they exist. The fog is so thick you wouldn't even see them coming before their gray, rotting hands rip into your flesh. Remaining as still as the concrete structures around me, I peered into the fog. Making the first move would be crucial, but holding back to avoid alerting the monster was just as important. To my left, a silhouette began to emerge from the fog. Slowly, quietly, painfully, I pulled my weapon from its holster and aimed it at its head. It shuffled closer, and I could see its unkempt hair and dirt-covered clothes, barely more than rags clinging to a skeletal body. The creature had void black eyes, leathery gray skin, and didn't wear an oxygen mask. It was a stalker. I lined up the sight of my weapon with the creature's skull and pulled the trigger. There was a flash that illuminated my surroundings and a crack that echoed through the decaying city. The contents of the stalker's skull splattered on the ground and it crumpled with a dull thud. Not wanting to be there when the horde of stalkers arrived, I sprinted into the fog.
All right, next up, we've got Joshua Heasel, a creative writing major, also from right here in St. Louis. They love to write strange fiction and poetry. After undergrad, they plan on going to grad school to further their education in creative writing. When they are not writing or in school, they can be found playing shows around the St. Louis area with their band, Blonde Guru.
Before I tell you my first poem, before I read my first poem, I guess, can I give a little bit of context on this one? It's based on the myth of Alcyon and Ceyx. The myth tells the story of two lovers in ancient Greece who proclaimed their love to each other, and they loved each other so much that they compared that love to that of the gods, Zeus and Hera. When Zeus heard this, he struck down Ceyx with a lightning bolt. Alcyon, being distressed over the loss of her love, threw herself into the sea. It was at that moment that the other gods looked down on her with kindness and turned her and Ceyx into kingfisher birds. This poem's called To Ceyx. A new lightness fills, or empties, me as my bones begin to hollow like your bones did. feathers sprout from my back, of my neck, my forearms, my calves, my shoulder blades. Each one tickles itself into new life, burrowing out of the surface. My arms expand as my fingers are ripped apart from each other and grow sickeningly long as new, beautiful blue wings form. I begin to feel the air push me upwards and down as I twist my new appendages. I imagine you felt the same thing when you fell. Down to your knees, lightning striking, piercing through your heart. Did it burn when Zeus struck you down? I often wonder if in the moment that someone is struck by lightning, if they can feel it, or if every nerve in their body is sent into overdrive and all that pain cancels out. I'm sure you will tell me when I see you next. I remember my mother once sitting at the kitchen table facing the wall. You see, we had the table pushed into the corner because we only had 3 chairs, telling me to watch out for men who loved as hard as you. I didn't listen. She didn't understand. Our love was like that of the gods. And now I'm just a bird plummeting to the sea. This next poem is a prose poem. It was published in the Green Fuse last year. It is about family and genetics and just struggle. If I had a house for a head, it would be a ranch style. Big red door for a mouth, bay windows for eyes, sun-shaded shingles for hair. Right above where my neck meets my head, a back door. I turn the old brass doorknob and try to speak, but only the squeaky groaning of wood would come out. A chimney instead of a colic. My mother used to glue down my hair with the thickest gel she could find, and it would pop right back up. There would be a fireplace that hasn't worked since before I was born. I wonder if the mantle would be decorated. Would there be a photo of me and my house-headed family? My father with his shrubbery beard, my mother with her low-hanging red eaves, and my sister with the same house head as me? I hope so, but who could see it? I would only buy button-up shirts to avoid the pain of pulling a house through a neck hole. When I walk down the street, I wonder if people would say anything. Would they call me homely? It'd be true, but it would be mean. One wouldn't be able to read my face and know what I'm thinking unless they peered through my bedroom window and watched as words materialized in my diary. I've been told that talking to me is like talking to a brick wall. That much is true. I'd shave the ivy and trim the bushes my father gave me. I'd paint my shutters a different color every chance I got. I'd make extensions and change my footprint. People would say, "What a beautiful house." When archaeologists dig me up, they won't find a skeleton, they'd find a home. When I was a child, I would get pneumonia every year in the fall. It was awful. I missed out on trick-or-treating a lot. And this poem that I'm about to read is about childhood and being sick. It's called A Pregnant Pause, like a lullaby. I wonder what book my father would read if I was sick and by his side. He'd sit in a visitor's chair squirming or pacing the room silently, crying out to his God, praying for a better son, a weller son, one that is not sick and never has been sick. 7 Habits of the Highly Successful Son, read like lines of scripture, full of false narratives and empty promises. Be proactive. Don't focus on the things you cannot control. You'll only get worse. Get sicker, get sadder. Don't focus on the chemicals that shoot or don't through your brain and hormones that lie when confronted with the truth. And I'd zone out before he got too far, like I always did, sitting in the worn-out, scratchy pews of my parents' church. The pastor loved a pregnant pause. Like a lullaby, he'd soothe me to sleep. I always loved chicken noodle soup when I found myself sick. Every year, I'd get pneumonia and couldn't trick or treat. I'd sit at home with my can of soup, keeping my hands and lungs warm. Seek first to understand, and then to be understood, my father would say. Another truth from his holy self-help book, nose deep in the pages, not looking at me. I would wonder then if he truly knew how to understand. Understanding is one thing, knowing is better. And does he understand? Maybe. But a book cannot teach you what is right in front of you, like a child with liquid in their lungs, wheezing. And then I got one more for y'all. This is going to be my last piece. It's a very fresh poem. I wrote it very recently. Only a handful of people in this room have seen it. Making it part of a larger collection that I will be writing for my senior thesis. It is a larger narrative of discomfort in one's own skin, alienation, and machines. This poem is called Loose Skin. On the median of I-44, hung over and stretched, wet and cold, a human body, or what is left of it. Cold and wrinkled, disposed of waste, the kind of thing that when driving at 85 you only see for a second, but unmistakably skin. A deflated, scooped out husk, no bones, no muscles, no viscera to fill its frame, flat and waving in the wind. Its face contorted into a scream I can still hear shearing my ears, drums, like a drill grating on metal. Its eyes, oh, the eyes, sockets open, watching as cars pass by. Behind those doors is nothing, the flesh of the scalp flush against them. Later, I imagine the other half of that grotesque thing, meat and bones removed from its shell, walking freely on its mushy soles, no longer protected. Or maybe it's like me, a disgusting metal sheen, fresh from its packaging, shrink wrap torn away, cogs and pistons where muscles should be. It walks down the sidewalk, asking those who cross its path, have you seen me before? Have you seen my skin? And those who pass by ignore it, that poor thing. One may put $1 in its hand, not paying notice to its pleas. I do not look down at my hands as they clutch the steering wheel. I am white-knuckled. No, there are metal bolts pressing through my skin where my knuckles used to be, my nails now rusted. The world does not wait while I molt this skin. If I am found folded over the median, I wonder who would slow down and take a look.
And last, but certainly not least, we've got Edie. Edith is an English major, philosophy minor, and creative writer. They primarily write poetry, but also dabble in fiction and nonfiction. They are currently working on the development of a new analytical lens for reading Black poetry, which focuses on the spatiality and movement. Edith also does visual art and makes jewelry. Let's give it up for Edie.
This first poem is one that I wrote in my independent study last semester. I was thinking about when to attempt narrative clarity and when to write against it, and how words can operate as landmarks in my poetry. This poem uses a lot of tracking terminology and plays around with kenning, and how naming or renaming a thing can be a gesture that empowers or disempowers what is being referred to. For context, when tracking, a light angle is the correct angle for seeing sign when utilizing the primary light source. Light angle. I know a poking stick when I see one. It is long enough that the poked thing must have stunk, too bad to kick. There were other sticks on the side of the road, but this recruit had been sharp-shaved. Shuffling right up to the poking stick were white-footed boy tracks. They're invasive to this region. The bruising through the buffalo clovers dawdles down from the tree line, and would-be, will-be poking sticks are broken off below where two kissing trees meet safe above white-footed boy heads. Continuity of sign, crying hickory sapped sweet mockernut tears on a ground wild for something wet. The heat mirages at me waving, come hickory home, get in here, come see the poked thing. I walk in the bruise leaving knee tracks and smell the rotten fruit shit meat fur stink. One set of signature tracks beginning and ending with her. In a patch of no grass, all sun, and hot, hot. The her prints wander circles around bloated, still soft rust. I invent sign of her wobbling from water want. Once white brick red belly and teeth tell me, lean in, she's breathing out whisper bubbles. The white-footed boys heard these say, poke me, poke me. I hear earth, earth under bramble, earth, and sandpaper-throated yips, and kecking over cooked flatworms. I see the signs scuffled over dry cough ground, under scrambling blackberry wild bush, baked and twisted, berry-fed, bone-bit, fur-full pup shits. Back through the bruise to the car-warm trunk water bottles, dirty Tupperware, and full bait cooler, and down the bruise again, white-footed boy tracks, all gone now. Two living pups drinking lasagna-flavored water in a fog of mother-pooped box stink. This next poem is one of the first poems that I wrote in college. Bringing this poem to workshop was really the first time that I felt really proud of something that I'd written. And I like the idea of reading it here as sort of a full circle moment. It's called Mixed Meat. If colors could rot like meat, this is rotten. Red that died on its way to black. Sorry, not dead red, gone red. Late red, past red. Color of my under eyes, under which underlies the lump of unseasoned light meat beating itself against the not quite bright white, off-white cage bars. Season the heart with parsley, black pepper, and sea salt on the windowsill in the glass salt cellar, casting contracting, striations of light on not yet tanned skin. Soon to be soft-grained African hide, not sun-tanned skin or spray-tanned skin, but 100% natural brown, not yet leather skin. Sorry, 98% palatable brown, 1/2 ripe white, with 2 semicircles of dead tired, done in, drooping, puce. This poem I wrote about how we make sense of things in times of grief, and whether it might be more nourishing to just accept the senselessness. It's called A Matter of Degree. Somewhere between where all is reflected and all is absorbed, one feeling can be decanted off of another, and we can keep the silt of grief without the unslaking liqueform guess. Or we can sit in the gray looking up through the muddy water and play at understanding, the specular reflection, indirect light of events, and draw explanatory shapes in the sediment. Note that there is no way to make a blighted rat palatable, but there is a way to cook it, and there is a way to eat it. This next poem is one of the shortest in my repertoire. I tend to write long, and this poem was an attempt to strip down and get to the bare elements of what I was trying to express. It's called Mimidae. Back when my every thought thing hymned in her voice, during the time when mine warbled, discordant hind legs trying to step into her gait, prior to my knowing that my walking song would be half of something, sooner than I could stand, when I only knew duets. published in The Fuse in 2023, and it's a meditation on growing up. It's called Dendropheo, which is a word that I made up. When I was small and obedient was the only way to be. Grandma told me never to swallow apple seeds for fear of them sprouting in my stomach, and I always spit them out. Everything I did felt loud in that house. Even the sound of apple seeds wetly clinking against the cheaper china echoed off the child-sized plate that was never on display in handsome mahogany glass-based cabinets. So imposing, to touch them was disrespectful to their authority. Now older and more disagreeable, I eat my apples indiscriminately. I make a point of swallowing them, those 5 bitter cyanide seeds, just to see how to drink the rain and rise up, to whip in the wind and eat the sun. How root systems split down my legs, fix me to soil, to house my newborn apple tree. The sapling disobeying the order of skin and nerve and networking, springing from my throat to displace the structure of my mouth, render useless chords of voice, tongue, and teeth. I surrender to the stretching of trunk, become a loose ring around its base, dismantle the hierarchy of body, defy rules of being, human being, daughter being, and granddaughter being. But still, the tree bears resentful fruit. The apple is wormy, bitter, and bleeds. This last poem I wrote on September 24th, the day of Marcellus Williams' execution. He was executed at 6 p.m. It is a bop, which is a really new poetic form that was created at Cave Canem, a summer retreat for African American poetry by poet Michael Weaver. Marcellus Williams was also a poet. Where my poetry is often obfuscated in its ideas, this poem felt as though it required clarity. It's called In Hopes of Someplace. I am writing poetry because the phones have been turned off. I am writing poetry because they will not take our calls, and in 4 hours a man will die, and there must be a place where he is alive. I hope in the Black Library of Babel there's a room where politicians have never been lynchmen, and Marcellus Williams lives in the shelves, and wings are dedicated to all the black men who did not, cannot, and will not die. And there is no word for when courts kill, and it is not now 5 p.m. And there are no petitions signed, because no one must be convinced. There must be a poem where he lives. I hope in the Black Library of Babel, his collections of poems span rows, and he does not write of prison, and he writes softly about nature and love, and he has never had a last meal, and he never will again. I need a poem where this could not happen. I hope in the Black Library of Babel there is a place between rows where it is never 6 p.m.
Coming to another wonderful student reading night. I want to give another round of applause for all of our wonderful writers.